If you're going to build a successful company, you have to be willing to innovate. You have to innovate in terms of your processes, the technologies you use to build your projects. You even have to innovate in terms of the structure of your company, the people that you employ. You have to be able to not only innovate, but you have to develop those things that you have internally in order to maximize the effectiveness of your company. My guest today on Construction Genius is Ronan Collins, and he is a civil engineer, project information manager, and a BIM director. And he is committed to driving innovation and digital engineering processes in the construction industry. He believes that the business value provided by BIM processes transforms the way that we design, construct, and maintain our infrastructure and our buildings. But we don't go into a techie, sort of geeky dive into BIM. I know I'm not really qualified to have that conversation, but what I am qualified to have a conversation with him about is human nature and how human nature is essential, or rather plays an essential role in the adoption of any change in an organization. And to that end, we have a tremendously interesting discussion around why some companies succeed in technology adoption and development of their organizations and why some companies don't. And if you're going to do this well, you must set expectations correctly as the senior executive in your company. You can't fall for the magic pill of technology. You can't even fall for the magic pill of a new hire who you think is going to transform your company. You must be committed to incremental development of your business over time, whether it's through technology, through processes, or through people. And with that in mind, you must be committed to small wins. You must be committed to identifying problems that can be solved with the tools that you have at hand. And you must understand how technologies are successfully implemented throughout organizations. And Ronan shares two key insights that you want to listen for, and I'm going to give you them up front in a short form so that you can be primed to hear them when we come to them in our conversation. The first one is this: if you want technology to be adopted throughout your organization, it must be championed and advocated by people in your organization who are able to communicate the benefits of that technology adoption to your organization in a way that people understand and buy into. So if you have some tech geeks in your company that understand the complexities of the latest and the greatest, and they see how it can be used, but they're unable to communicate those advantages to the rest of your organization, then your technology implementations and innovations will fail. That's one of the insights that Ronan shares that I think is fundamental, and he gets into way more detail on that during our discussion. The second thing is this: as you're going through technology innovations or innovations of any kind, where you have, let's say, an internal project manager who is responsible for that innovation, that person is going to learn a tremendous amount about your business that goes beyond even just the implementation of the technology that they are responsible for. And that learning process is going to equip them to help your business to thrive in ways that go beyond just the implementation of that technology. In other words, when you task someone with the implementation of a new process, a new technology, what you're doing is you're preparing them for future leadership roles in your company. That is an essential insight right there. Okay, so I've primed the pump a little bit because I want to make sure that you listen carefully as we go through this interview here today, because Ronan has a tremendous amount of insight to share. It's going to be very helpful to you. So again, if you're driving, don't take notes. But if you're just are hanging out at the house or at the office, feel free to take notes. You can also go to the website and check out the notes on the blog, constructiongenius.com/podcast, and you'll see the notes under the episode. And if you have any questions about this episode, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me at eric@constructiongenius.com. And of course, reach out to Ronan. He's on LinkedIn, and I'll put a link to his profile in the show notes. This has been a long introduction today, so I hope you're still with me. And enjoy my conversation with Ronan. You'll find it tremendously useful. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Ronan, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you very much, Eric. It's great to meet you.
I'm very excited to have you on the show today because I know that you do a lot of thinking around the importance of talent development in construction companies. Why is it that construction companies struggle to develop the talent that they have?
I think one of the issues that we see repeating itself over and over again is basically construction companies are running at such a pace that they don't think they have the time to bring up talent. And what they try and do is they hire the talent that they need rather than to develop the talent that they should be developing internally. So for me, the lessons I've learned over the years is that it appears to be a lack of a willingness to invest time and effort, a lack of ability to invest the time because people are so busy, and then probably a little bit of a lack of understanding of what should they actually be investing in, what talent should they be developing, and how should they be going about doing it. So for the most part, people develop their skills independently, sometimes in their own private time. Some people develop skills based on what they think they need. Some people develop them on a curiosity, but it's not done in any kind of strategic long-term manner. It's just done when it's needed on an ad hoc basis.
There's a couple of elements there that I noticed. The first one is the one of time.
Yeah.
And the second one is understanding specifically what talents should be developed.
Yeah.
So I'd like to first address the one right off the gate because, people talk about this all the time. I'm so busy building projects, I don't have time to do, and then fill in the blank, in this case, talent development. Yeah. In your experience, how do the best construction companies who do invest in talent development manage that time issue?
They make it a priority. So they basically say, if we're going to stay ahead of the competition, if we're going to be effective, if we're going to be efficient, we need to have people in our teams that can do X, Y, and Z skills. So I come from the world of digital engineering or BIM or virtual design and construction, whichever acronym or description you like. And I've got a mandate to get people trained up in things like the use of laser scans and how effective laser scans can be doing for progress monitoring, or simple photography recording. How you can use 360 photographs to create photogrammic models of buildings. Now, not everybody needs to know how to use the technology, but if you're a site manager, you need to know how that technology works. You need to know how it's going to be useful. You need to know how you can get access to it, and you need to know how to use it. So if you're a construction company and you want to stay ahead of the posse, you need to be thinking about, okay, I need to train up technical guys to do the right thing and collect the right information. And I need to train up the managers and the project leaders to understand how to go about doing that efficiently and get the right results out of the process. And what we see is a lot of people just try it haphazardly, or the BIM guy in the trailer on the job site is the guy that's given a 360 camera and a drone and off he goes. And no one's quite sure what he's doing. And he's having a lot of fun with the technology. But the site manager doesn't know what the benefits are, and the project managers don't know what the benefits are. So it's one of those things where you got to get, the way I describe it is, you got to get clear on the problem you're trying to fix, be able to define what that problem is, and then go and look for what is the right solution to fix this problem. Is it a technology solution? Is it a process change? Is it bringing in new skills? And then plan out a strategy to develop the skills, the talent required to address that problem. Whether that's bringing up people in the world of BIM, bringing up people in the world of new construction technology. And one of the biggest ones now is data and data analytics, and understanding how to build data dashboards, understanding how to get real-time reporting from construction projects, and all of the nuances around that. So there's a whole bunch of areas that people could be developing talent around in BIM, construction technology, data, and all that kind of good stuff.
So I'm familiar with that idea of identify your problem and then, find a solution for that problem.
Yeah.
Why is it that construction companies misidentify their problem? How does that happen? So
what they do is so I'll give you an example, right? So I was working in Hong Kong, and one of the forward-thinking developers started investing into BIM very early on. This is back in 2005, 2006. And they started working with Frank Gehry and the Gehry Technologies platform, which is the forerunner to some of the more sophisticated tools. And they were really good, and they appeared to be very successful. the other developers and the other contractors saw what was going on. They said, we need to do the same thing. They were playing catch up right off the bat. So I call it the Gucci handbag effect. So one person gets the Gucci handbag and then everybody else goes, I need a Prada or I need something else. They're going to go after the next best thing. But they don't understand why they're doing it or what's the right way of doing it or which brand of thing they should be going after. They just see the other guys got it, so they try and play catch up. So, and this is the difference between leading the industry and chasing the pack. And I think a lot of people are stuck chasing the pack. They listen to a podcast like yours, or they watch a video online, or they go to a conference and they see all the latest and greatest stuff. And then they go, I need to get that. I need to get laser scanning, or I need to start doing BIM. But they don't understand the why and they don't understand the how.
Okay, so then when you see these new technologies, a couple of things happen. Sometimes, the owner of the company sees them and gets pumped up, or someone, one of their project folks or someone in the field comes and presents something. How does a construction company know that this is the right direction to take in terms of development, whether it be a technology development, a talent development, or a process development?
They don't know. What they need to do is they need to start working out how they're going to do some pilot studies and figure out whether it's going to work or not for their business. So no one's going to know the value of something when it walks in the door, whether I walk in with a great idea or you turn up with a great idea. What I've learned is you need to do some testing. Get a project, try it out in a project, figure out what the benefits are, give it to the guys who are forward thinking, give it to the guys who are the innovators. So very often the more forward thinking, innovative types in the business. And have then come back and say, well, we use it on this project. Maybe it's a residential, maybe it was a commercial, maybe it was a school project, it might have been a highway, it doesn't matter. Pick a project, run it, try it out, figure out what it is for your business, and then determine if it's going to add value or not. And then if it's deemed to be valuable, then come up with a game plan as to how you're going to roll it out. It could be a 6-month rollout, it could be a 1-year rollout, and then what training is required across that organization. So to give you an example, in Malaysia, I was working with a company called Gamuda Engineering. They're a very large engineering construction company, and they have a graduate scheme. So Gamuda is heavily invested into training and bringing up talent in their business. It's part of their core DNA. They're committed to training people. And one of those graduates came out of university, very smart guy, electrical engineer, and he was put on the tunneling team. And they were drilling tunnels through Malaysia for the underground metro. And one of the projects he took on was, first of all, rearranging the delivery of materials to the yard. So he got himself an iPad, he started doing some very clever stuff with some forms, and immediately people could see the benefit. People knew where everything was, and he was able to tie it back into some other systems. They then took that guy and had him train up other people, and then it became a kind of a standard way of managing those tunneling construction project sites. That guy joined up with 2 other guys that were coming from similar programs, and they actually went forward and developed an actual tunnel driving technology where we call it an autonomous tunneling boring machine. So those guys were writing code in the evenings, on the weekends, bringing in other people, but they figured out a way to actually control a tunneling machine underground remotely rather than be completely relying on a driver in the machine through common sense engineering, understanding a construction problem, and then using technology to solve that problem. That's in the culture of that business. They're always looking to train people up, bring those people along. And the interesting thing is because they're so good at training people and bringing up talent, and then when these things work, they've actually been awarded some big global international awards, and they've actually used that to then go win business in another country. So Gamuda have now expanded into Australia. One of their kind of feather in their caps was the use of this technology and bringing that new technology into the Australian markets. So if you have that development mentality of bringing up new talent, especially young talent, and giving them the chance to try things out, and every so often they're going to find a nugget, that's hugely valuable to a business as well, because that's a differentiator when it comes to winning work.
How do you balance the mindset of developing new technologies and testing out new technologies with the need to make money on the project that you're building? Because a lot of the resistance that you get to trying new technologies is, maybe the next project or the next project, because this project we need to execute.
Because they haven't defined the why they're doing it. So if you have a well-defined problem or a well-defined reason for taking on a new technology, you're going to have put together some kind of business case. You're going to figure out if I invest 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, $1 million, I'm going to get a return here, here, and here. That could be a return on a productivity. It could be a time saving. It could be a material saving. But if you haven't figured that out, if you haven't figured out what the business case is, what the impact on the bottom line is, you shouldn't be investing in that technology or that talent development because you don't know what you're doing. So it goes back to that proof of concept. If you did a proof of concept, so what we discovered on a different one was that we started using digital forms on site to remove paper processes. So we started giving guys tablets. We started having them sign off on material inspections. We started having them sign off on scaffolding inspections, just using digital devices. And what we were trying to do was speed up processes. What we ended up finding was it sped up the processes, and it actually started spreading to the business quicker, because what we discovered was the subcontractors worked out that they could use the system, they could get their work certified, and they could get paid sooner. So we had a benefit that we had much better control over our sites. We had much better jurisdiction of what was happening. And our supply chain, we're getting a better outcome because we're getting paid faster. Now, not every construction manager wants to pay their subbies faster, but the message is very clear. If you do a proof of concept, you're going to find the benefits. You're going to find what the return on the value is before you spend a truckload of money. Okay,
so let me just, I've made some notes here, and I want to feed it to you so that you can just feed it back and see if I'm following here. Sure. What you need to do first is you need to define the problem that you're seeking to solve.
Yep.
Then you have to source the change agent to solve the problem, whether that be a technology, a process change, some sort of development of some kind, maybe a piece of equipment.
Yeah. Could be a hire. You could need to bring somebody in to help you out. It could be a hire as well.
Okay. And then there's this idea of a small test of this change or this technology that is supported from the executive level, but it has an advocate, and ideally one single advocate who's invested in really and committed to making sure that that test is thoroughly done. Yep. Did I hear that right?
100% correct, yeah.
Okay, and then you've got to be willing to do the test and be sort of agnostic as to the result that comes, whether it's good or bad, so that you can then iterate off of the information that you receive and make more changes as you go along. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. You're pretty much, yeah.
Okay, now what have I missed? What did I miss?
There's one secret ingredient. If it proves to be successful, both the senior executives and the guy that is so-called sponsoring it need to be capable of driving it into the future projects, because they're going to come up with resistance. So if you take the digital forms that we set up on the construction projects to remove paper off site, we had the sponsorship of the senior management of the company right up to the board level. So you have to have that board level sponsorship. And then we had the guys that were doing the pilot study were very good at communicating and very good at training. So they were able to then go and actually share their experience, share the lessons, and get other people set up in the system. And then they built the training materials, then they built the training sessions, and they championed it going forward. So don't just have one guy test it. Make sure that the guy that's testing is going to be the champion driving it forward into the other businesses, because he's going to be invested to make it grow across the business. But you need to have C-suite support, because it starts once it meets the level of resistance and change, and I don't want that in my project, and I haven't got time for this. Once those resistance conversations start, if this guy knows that his boss at the C-suite is going to come down on him, then that's an absolute necessity. You have to have that management support. So you need to be thinking, whoever's doing the pilot needs to be a really good internal champion to drive it into all the other projects if it's successful.
See, right there, I want to talk about this a little bit, because you described earlier on, right? So you bring in this super sharp, let's say, engineer. Yep. And let's say this guy is just, I have an assessment tool that I use with all of my clients, and it ranks someone's thinking style from 1 to 10. And let's just say this guy's a 10.
Okay.
Right? Now, if you think about the bell curve, right? You've got, 2.5% of people up here on the right where they're super bright. And the problem with that, though, is that they can have a challenge communicating with everyone else. Yeah. So they see something crystal clear. And when other people don't see what they see, oftentimes they're like, dude, you're stupid. Why are you missing this? And so that communication piece... Right. That communication piece that you're talking about often falls down at that point, because you've got your 2%ers over here saying this is obvious, and 98% of the companies saying, no, it's not.
So there's two things in there immediately, right? So first of all, You don't want a 10 doing these pilot studies. You want a 6 or a 7 doing it, because if you're relying on a 10 to get it to work, they're going to overcome whatever problems they find. If they have to write code, they'll write code. If they have to buy hardware, they'll buy hardware. They will outthink everything, and they'll find a solution to the problem. But they'll end up with a solution that's so complex and so difficult that if they can't explain it to the 6s and 7s, it's dead immediately. So you have to pick someone who's middle of the road, normal, good communicator, understands your core business, is not a genius, is not an absolute whiz kid. That's the last thing you want. But a guy that you can trust that's going to give it a fair assessment. And if he's not able to sell it to his peers because it's too complex or too sophisticated or too difficult, you haven't got a solution. You've just got another headache. because those things, you've heard the term KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? If you veer too far off that path and you end up with a really complicated solution to what's already a complicated problem, you're not going to succeed. It has to be relatively straightforward to roll out, and it has to be easy to train people to do. If it's anything more than that, you've got another battle on your hands, because then you're going to have to do a whole lot more talent development, a whole lot more training to get people up to that bar. So you have to find something. You have to incrementally improve your company. You can't just go from running around with paper forms and clipboards to doing Microsoft Business Analytics with all your construction projects. You have to walk them down that path. Maybe the ambition is in 3 to 5 years, you want real-time dashboards. You want to have QR codes and all the material coming into site. You want RFID tags and everything on the machines. You want GPS trackers on everybody's helmets, and you want to get a whole bunch of data off site. If that's the vision, great. But you can't set that up on day one. You got to walk the whole business along that journey, and you need to be using the 6s, 7s, and 8s, and not relying on the 10s and the superstars, because the 6s, 7s, and 8s are going to actually give you a much more better outcome because it's more realistic.
Okay, so this is tremendous. That right there is a tremendous insight. And I'd like to just explore this a little bit, because it seems to me, just from an outside observer of construction companies, that one of the reasons they struggle with this technology adoption is what you're describing here. And they don't take this incremental approach. And the reason why is because they have technology salespeople, software salespeople banging on their door all day, every day, right? And we all know that people buy emotionally and then justify logically, right? That's what we do. And whether it's buying a new car, by buying a house, and what you're describing as the process to successfully implement technology runs completely counter to our natural human way of buying things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The other issue is we live in what I call the microwave culture. So we expect this solution to work within 3 minutes of pressing go, right? So the other problem is that a lot of the technologies that we're talking about, whether it's BIM, whether it's photogrammetry, whether it's the use of drones, whether it's the collection of data, it's not a 3-minute solution. It needs thinking. It needs proper process management. It needs proper training. It needs skills development. It's not going to work out of the box. And I think that's the other problem, is that we all, like, I'm sitting here at home, I'm talking to you on an iPad. It took me 2 seconds to log in and get this call going. And that's what people want. They expect it to work instantaneously. But when you start talking about a construction project and you start talking about all of the moving parts and all the moving pieces to get a building built, and then you try and instigate a new technology or a new process, it's not going to work out of the box. It's not going to work first time. It's going to fall over, and you have to expect it to fall over. And it's not going to return. It's not going to give you a return the first time. It might be 2 or 3 projects before you really start to see a return on your investment. That mentality is also a challenge. People want a quick fix. They want an easy hit. They want to get the results straight out of the gate.
Yeah, this is tremendous. So. And I think it's so important that we, as a company, a construction company, sets appropriate expectations for technology adoption. And that's why they have to have a sort of a dispassionate consideration of technology adoption, particularly when they're faced with the latest and greatest thing coming in from the salespeople, whether it be software or a piece of hardware or something like that.
Yeah. So the other thing as well, Eric, is as you get on in years, you get a chance to reflect. And recently I was invited to do a presentation to Hong Kong universities. So I'm now living in Riyadh. Before I came here about 1.5 years ago. Before that, I was in Malaysia for 5 years. And before that, I'd spent 15 years in Hong Kong. And while I was in Hong Kong, I was a big advocate. And I was one of those guys going around selling technology, selling ideas. In 2004, 2005, 2006, I was pushing the use of BIM on major projects in Hong Kong. And we were talking about things like sharing information, building models, and using technology. That's 15, 16, 17 years ago. And the stuff that I was talking about then is as pertinent today as it was 15 years ago. The industry is very, very slow to change. So we all wake up and we hear about the Amazons and the Netflix and the Spotifys and how quickly they've become from. But when you look at the construction industry, we're doing stuff now that people think is innovative and new that we were doing 20 years ago. No, we're not doing anything that's rocket science. We're not doing anything that's transformative. We're just iterating forwards. So again, it's a slow process. You're not going to change a construction business in a 6-month window or a 12-month window. And you'll do well to change it in a 3 to 5 year window. So you've got to start taking the long-term perspective. You've got to start mapping out your journey. You've got to start looking for the wins now and then look for the bigger wins in the longer term. And I think that the more schooled and the more experienced construction business owners will appreciate the taking the long-term view. But I remember full well when I was in my 20s, I wanted to hit now. I didn't have to wait 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. I wanted to win now. I'm a bit older and a bit more wiser. So now I take a bit more of a longer term perspective on things.
That's tremendous. I really appreciate that. Let's just explore that a little bit. Why do you think the construction industry is so slow to change?
There's a couple of things. So one is around the silos that are in our industry. Our industry is very fragmented. So you have very specialist trade contractors. So you have guys who only do curtain walling or only do ceilings or only do piping or only do cable runs. And then you have main management contractors who are fighting all the time for work. So it's a very competitive industry.
Yep.
If you're a specialist subcontractor and you do really good work for a year or 2 or 3 years, and then somebody else rocks up and offers a price that's 5-10% lower, the management contractor is going to go for the guy that's 5% lower, 10% lower, because he's working to margins, he's working to money. So there's no loyalty. Yep. And in an environment where it's cost competitive, there's no loyalty, people then don't invest in R&D, people don't invest in developing systems. So they keep doing the same thing over and over again, and they try and figure out ways of doing it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So our industry is handicapped by the way we procure the work and by the way that we contract companies, and the fact that we don't have long-term agreements, we don't have long-term supply agreements, we don't have long-term partnering agreements. We buy the work on the job, for the job, and if you're good enough and you're priced right, you might get the next contract. If not, I'm going to give it to somebody else. So we work in that really competitive, cutthroat market, and it's counterproductive when it comes to doing research and development, technology development. We're seeing improvements, certainly over the last 3 to 5 years. I'm seeing things in the industry which is heartening, and people are starting to understand we have to invest back in the industry. But in real terms, we work in an environment that's very, very difficult to innovate in because it's very hard to justify the returns on those investments.
Very well stated. Let's talk about, you said you're seeing improvements. Tell me where you're seeing some of those improvements.
So we're seeing a lot more technology on site. So it's becoming more and more obvious. If you look at, like, I've never worked in the US per se, but if you look at some of the stuff that I keep an eye on, you look at some of the construction projects I'm even involved with now, just simple things. Most people on sites now have a smartphone. And most people now have the ability to take photographs and allocate them to a GPS location. So, for example, we have a GIS platform that we're using in our construction projects. All of our safety staff, all of our environmental staff can take a photograph. It'll capture the GPS. It'll get shared immediately to our platform, and then we can start to collect that information at that location. It's time-based and it's geographically located. So by having having a smartphone device in everybody's pockets, there's a lot more technology on site. And then with the advent of 4G and 5G, the speed to access of information has improved a lot. So there's a lot of people with direct access technology. But the other thing that's fascinating is that if you look at the investment world and you look at the money that's pouring into investment, there's so much money going into construction technology startups over the last 5 years. That's a clear indicator that the world has moved. And about 3 years ago, I was at a presentation in Singapore, and they were talking about back in the 90s and the 2000s, even 2010s, to invest in a construction technology, you would only invest in a company that had already swayed one of the big contractors. If you were looking at investing in a company, if they hadn't affected an AECOM or if they hadn't affected one of the big contractors and they weren't using the software, it was dead. But now what's happened is if you have a small company, 15, 20 people, and you're only selling to 100, 150 subbies, you will still get investment because you have the potential to grow. So you don't need to have the huge clients. You can have the smaller clients, the smaller contractors. If you have a product that's valuable, you will find investors. So looking at it from two ways, looking at what I see on the site in terms of what technology is on site, and looking at where the money is, because money talks, where the money's pouring in. You've got it's interesting. There's a fund that I watch and keep an eye on called Brick and Mortar, and there's a lady in there that I know, Alice, and you watch what they're investing in, and they find some really clever stuff and some really clever technologies. So things are much better now than they were 10 years ago, and obviously, while it's been a disaster, COVID has also accelerated some of these technologies in certain ways, particularly remote working, remote monitoring, remote checking of sites. So there is more technology on site. There are more opportunities.
I'd like to go back a little bit to the idea of you really well described the silos in the industry, and then the way that work is procured.
Yeah.
And again, you just nailed it with this idea of, there's not this long-term relationship thing where I know I've got money coming in for 5 years and I can apportion some of that money towards tech, R&D, et cetera.
Yeah.
In your experience, which side of the business drives the technology most effectively, the changes? Is it the general contractor side, the guys going out and getting the work, or is it the subcontractor side, the guys who are building the work?
Oh, it's probably some blend of both, but it's probably predominantly led by the general contractors, because the general contractors they wield the bigger axe. So I'll give you an example. So if you're a subcontractor and you're bidding to work in a project, and you go to a GC and you say, okay, how do I submit my drawings? How do I get my shop drawings to you? And he says, well, we're using X, Y, and Z platform. And you're going to have to buy a license to get on that platform. And then that platform, it basically has got some apps running on it and everything else. And there's a number of these platforms out there, right? So depending on what the general contractor is using, then all the subbies have to go along those lines. So the general contractors are the ones who can actually sway and drive the market in certain ways. If you're in a niche environment, let's say you're a steel fabricator, there's a couple of tool sets you can use that are going to be very specific to your business. But at the end of the day, you've still got to take that data and that information, give it back to the main contractor in a format that they can then use. And in a rare circumstance, the clients will be the tail that wags that dog. So if you've got if it's a major infrastructure investment, like maybe a government investment or a railway investment or something like that, they may say, well, this is the platform we're using, and everybody else has to follow suit. So, but from my experience, it's the GCs that are really the guys who kind of have the biggest sway in terms of who's doing what and how they're doing it, and which tools are using and which software you have to buy to play on their projects.
Don't you think that'll be ultimately the way that a lot of the technology is driven, from the perspective of government agencies who are adopting these technologies and seeing them because they have so much power and so much sway? Because again, if the owner isn't bought into this technology change, then it's kind of tough even for the GCs and the subs to drive it.
Yeah, but the thing that we've learned, though, is that let's take the information management systems as an example, right? So let's say an owner's got an information management system, and they're going to say, right, we want you to submit your drawings on this platform. We want you to give us all the information on that platform. But the contractor's running another platform because that's what they've been using for years and years and years. What we're seeing now is it's getting more straightforward to move data between the platforms. So long as your data is structured the right way, and so long as the client knows what they want, you don't really have to be on the client's platform. And what we saw in the UK over the last couple of years, it started off 5, maybe 10 years ago, where the client would dictate what platform you had to use, and everybody had to get on that platform. But then they realized, actually, we don't want to be buying all these platforms, and we sure as hell don't want to be paying for all the access for all these users. So they've now moved to the point where we have a platform. We're going to give you a key to the door. You need to open the door and then drop the stuff in, and then you're out of here. And however you manage your data on your project, that's entirely up to you. So whatever platform you want, then on you go. So what you see now is that the clients will demand where the information is delivered, but they don't necessarily demand that you have to operate on their platform. So it's a better way. It makes life easier for everybody. If you're a contractor, you don't need to have one platform for one client and another platform for another client. You can choose what you want to use as your business platform. And the only thing you got to be clear on is this a platform that I can rely on to pass information to my clients or pull information from my subs?
That's very good. So again, one of the struggles with technology adoption is this is going to cost me time, it's going to cost me money, it's going to cost me effort.
Yeah.
What is the most persuasive argument or reasoning that you have seen and that you've spoken to contractors about in terms of how their lack of technology adoption is impacting their growth and their ability to, thrive as the company goes into the future?
There's a couple of components to that. So the obvious one is a competitive advantage in the marketplace. So if you're going into a commercial development owner and you're turning up with papers and clipboards and the old way of doing it, and your competitor is turning up with an iPad, they've done a construction simulation, they can show you your building in a model, you're in the back foot straight away. So just purely from a perception with the owners. What's more important to me is the talent war. So we started off this conversation talking about talent development and bringing people up to the business. If you can't hire people into your business because they come to an interview and the students now and the graduates know full well which companies are forward thinking, which companies are doing everything. If you can't bring in the talent, you're
Yes.
never going to overcome the problem. So you've really got to take a view that if we're going to be here in 10 or 15 years' time as a business, we're going to need to be bringing people in now, training them up. But if our competitors are more attractive in terms of, well, they've got a better attitude towards technology and they're more invested in technology, you're not going to get the brains coming out of the schools. You're going to get the fours and the fives that are at the bottom of the class. You're not going to be getting the bright stars coming out of class. So there's two parts. One is competitive advantage and one is talent attraction.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I like that. So we've already talked about this a little bit, but I do want to go back over it because I think it's so important. Let's talk a little bit more about the connection between culture and the development of talent, or just the development of the business in terms of technology that we've been covering so far.
When you say culture, you mean the culture within the business in terms of how the business...
Yeah. And so when you think of culture, what do you mean by culture? What does that word mean to you?
So for me, it's the environment that people are operating in and the environment that people are working in. So senior management create the culture in their business and middle management keep the culture alive. So if you've got forward-thinking people in your business and they've got all these great ideas, they then need to have people in the organization that just keep that culture going. So if you have an innovative style of culture where people that go off and come up with a new idea or come up with a suggestion to change things, and that idea is welcomed, it's tested, it's given a chance to grow, that's the culture that people want to work in. If your culture is get the damn thing done, get it done as quickly as possible, get it done at the cheapest price, and if you have to screw the guys down for 10 cents, but just get me the job done. If it's bullish driven, get everything get done, which is not unusual in our industry, that's a different culture. And it's not a culture that I would ever be attracted to work in. So the culture to me is what it feels like to work in a business, what it feels like to be in a business, and whether you're appreciated or not. And I'm an innovative guy by my nature. I love pushing the envelope. I love trying out new things. And I'm very fortunate. I've been, in my career, very fortunate to work in some very good companies and very good projects. Not everybody has the same luxury, but you can see the different cultures in the companies we work with. And you can see the guys who turn up with a grim look on their face. You know they're just grinding it out. You know they're just trying to get stuff done. You know they're trying to cut corners. And then you can see the companies that rock up with some clever ideas and they've got their hands on some new tech and they've got their hands on some new ideas and they've got a spring in their step. So that to me is the culture. So if you have an innovative culture or a company that wants to be trying out new things, wants to be at least trying to figure out how to get ahead, they may not be ahead, but at least trying to figure it out, that's a culture that people want to work in.
So let me ask you this. You say that you've always had this innovative mindset. Was that the case since your youth, that you've always thought innovatively?
Yeah, I can't remember what I was like in my youth, but yeah, I've always been pushing the envelope. I've always been looking for the newest thing, the newest way of doing things. So when I came out of university, computers were the newest thing. So I graduated in 1996, which seems like it is a quarter century ago. So it seems like a long time ago. And when I graduated, the first project I was working on, if I wanted to send sketches to the construction team, I got it on a fax. So I used to draw out my engineering sketches A4 and fax it to the job site. And then, there you go. And then, but then I started working with the guys there to set up the IT system. So I then joined the IT committee with the company I was in. It was a company called Arps. They're an engineering company in Ireland. I was on the IT committee. We rolled out PCs on desks. We rolled out email for everybody. I was the first guy doing 3D modeling in the business. We started doing 3D CAD modeling back in 98, 99. And so I've always been trying to push the envelope. I've always tried to be at the front of the industry and figure out what is the next best thing and how do we get it to work. So I've always been keen to try out new things. So
it's interesting because you say that culture is created by the senior management. And, I can picture a construction company. Let's say you have the top group of people. You've got one guy who really knows how to win work. You've got another guy who knows how to keep track of the numbers. And then you've got someone who's able to build the work. They're able to get out there and, kick some ass and make sure that, people are showing up on time and all that kind of stuff. And you've got those three guys. They bid the work, they build the work, and then they get paid for it. And so you can build a good construction company on those three things.
Yep.
And what if that none of those three guys are innovative in, just in that natural way that you're describing? What do you do then? Like if you're that group, you're in the group, and I can say, if you're one of those, if you're one of those three, you're looking at each other and you say, I know we need to be innovative. It's not in our DNA. What do we do then?
Okay, so very interesting. It's an interesting puzzle to think about, because the guy that's going out winning work cannot win the work if he knows that the guys who are delivering it are going to end up spending a huge amount of money and bring in luxurious subcontractors and everything else. And at the same time, if the guy goes out and buys the work and puts in a price that's way too low, the guys who are delivering it are going to go, hang on a sec, we can't deliver for that. Right. So, and when it comes to making money, the last guy in the food chain has to make the accounts stack up. Right. So those three guys, while you've painted them as three very individual characters, they're intertwined at the hip. So one guy can't win work unless the other two guys know what they're doing. So
no, but let me explain to you what I mean. What I mean, though, is that I can be very good at that one thing.
Yeah.
And so let's say winning work, right? So I'm good at developing relationships. People know me, they trust me, they like me. We have delivered in the past. We brought a project in on time, under budget, and with good quality. Even if it wasn't with the highest technology in the world, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just not in our natural way of thinking to be on that cutting edge, to be excited about the new thing, to want to implement it.
Yeah.
So it's not a part of my culture, even though I can build a successful construction company without necessarily having someone there who's always thinking about the next thing coming up.
So if you've got that outfit and that outfit's running as slickly as you described it, then there's no requirement or there's no kind of reason that they would need to innovate. But when that company starts figuring out that there's a Katira who's suddenly winning all their work and suddenly there's no business for them to build houses because some company that now Katira's out of business already, but something like that comes along on the horizon, right? So all of a sudden Katira are building buildings at 15, 20% less than you can build them for because they've mechanized the whole thing. They've come up with a much better system. Then you're stuck because then you can't innovate fast enough to catch up. You have to figure out, are we able to keep this going for the next 10, 15 years in the way we're doing it now? Or we keep doing what we're doing and then we look for the 1%, we look for the 2% improvement through some kind of innovation. Maybe there's a better way of doing the sales. Maybe there's a better way of managing the projects. Maybe there's a better way of reporting to our customer what we're doing. Maybe there's a better way of managing our subcontractors and getting a better deal. And maybe there's a better way to having long-term agreements with our subcontractors. If those three guys that you've described are doing their 99%, and if they're spending 1% of their time looking for the innovation, looking for the next idea, keeping an eye to the horizon, what's going on, they'll still be here doing the thing in 10, 15 years' time. But if they think today that they've got it licked and they don't have to worry about it, they won't be around in 10, 15 years' time. So the innovation is going to be driven by a necessity to survive rather than, you can't just tell somebody, you got to be innovative. Go and be innovative. People go, what the hell does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. But keep looking for the edge. Keep looking for the 1%. Keep looking for the 2%. Keep looking for something that's going to marginally improve the business year on year on year. You're never going to find a 15% step-up improvement. There's no magic bullets out there. But start looking for the small gains. Start looking for the small wins. And maybe the next small win helps you win the next project just by being much better presentation or having a much better story to tell. Maybe the next win is to just cut down your costs, cut down your operational issues. But keep looking for that next saving, that next opportunity.
And so I think one of the things that I'm trying to get to here is if we're all looking around the table, and again, I think this is one of the struggles with technology and technology adoption is, for some people, it's not in their bones. They're not excited about it. And they have to realize that and somehow inject that into their culture. Yep. They have to add that into their culture. That's kind of what I'm trying to get to there.
Yeah, there's a certain amount. Yeah, so if it doesn't come naturally, then you have to manage it in.
That's what so that's what I'm getting at. It doesn't come naturally. Yeah. I know in the back of my head or even in the front of my head I need to do it. Yeah. But then how do I inject it in?
Yeah. There isn't one way of doing it, right? So it's going to depend on, like, if you take those three characters you described, right? Let's call them the three white men, right? Just for right? If one of them has a technology bent, if he's the guy that's got a drone that he flies at the weekends, or he's looking into whatever the technology is, then ask him to come up with some clever ideas. Or maybe these three wise men are like you and I. They're getting into their 50s. They've got a couple of kids. They've got or maybe there's a couple of youngsters coming into the business. And there's they've got maybe an under manager or a junior or someone like a trainee or whatever you want to call them. Get them to come up with ideas and support them. So you can manage the innovation by saying, okay, I'm a Luddite. I'm not going to bring in new technology. But Joe's down there on the shop floor, or Jim's out on the site. He's pretty switched on. He's always got the latest gadget. He's the guy walking around with his Fitbit and his Apple Watch, and he's got his AirPods, and he's always on the tech. We'll get him to look at it, and we'll support him. So, and that goes back to that management, C-suite management. So if you're running the business, okay, if you're the Luddite, fine. you're winning already because you've acknowledged you're the Luddite. Then just go and find somebody else to do the innovation for you. But then when they come up with the good ideas, you got to back them.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. All right. So we started talking about talent development. We've really gotten into the development of the company in terms of innovation, bringing in new technologies. Let's just summarize here some of the things that we've been saying. If you were sitting next, you're having dinner with a construction company CEO, and they're saying, Ronan, what are the first steps I need to take to begin to really systematically develop my business from a talent, a technology, a process point of view? What would you tell that person to do?
Oh, starting off, I would actually start off with figuring out what you've got already. So I would actually go back and say, well, what do you think you've got already? What technologies are you guys using? What platforms have you got? What access have you got to different things? And then I would go back to that problem definition. I'm going, okay, what's bleeding the money? What's bleeding more money than anything else? What are the core problems you're facing? And then start the conversation there going, okay, is there something wrong with our current technology that we're using that's causing this bleed? Or are we missing a piece of it? Or have we not paid for the training and implementation that we needed to get the thing working? Or we just don't have it. We need to go and acquire that technology. But it's if you're talking to a CEO, they're driven by productivity, they're driven by business opportunity, they're driven by margins. They're going to know where they're losing money. And it's getting that defined. So it's like the way I did it before was when we did the data analytics part was the biggest problem that we had was we had lots of data we were capturing. We had lots of information and we could create all kinds of fantastic dashboards. Our biggest challenge was getting the senior managers to actually tell us what they wanted to know. What do you need to know about this project? What's the critical information you need to know about this project so we can actually surface that and give you that in terms of a report? So getting the CEO to ask the question is, what's the problem that I've got? What's the problem that I've got right now that a technology solution or a training program or a skills development initiative could help to address, right? And then define that problem, define the opportunity. It could be a win work strategy. It could be an increase in performance. It could be a profitability strategy. It could be a return to shareholders. Some people are working for shareholders. Whatever that win strategy is going to be. And then you go looking for the solutions. Do I have to buy technology? Do I have to hire people? Do I have to create an academy and upskill my entire workforce to get people to do this correctly? Do I need to go and buy some consulting services to get the thing set up correctly? Because I bought this really cool platform to do all my commercial, but it's not working because it's not talking to the other platform. There's something gone wrong. It's all that kind of stuff. But all of the technology conversations are completely pointless in the absence of a problem definition.
Yep. And just to go back and reiterate what you said earlier, I think it's so vital for someone who is a CEO, senior leadership, to set expectations appropriately. Yeah. That this technology that we're adopting, it's not a magic pill. It's not going to change things overnight, despite what any salespeople might say. We're going to have bumps in the road. It's a test and try and iterate approach that really helps to smooth the path of technology adoption by setting the right expectations within the organization.
Yeah. And I'll give you one other nugget for free. One of the things I've noticed is that the guys that end up doing these proof of concepts, they end up learning more about your business than if they go about doing the normal stuff. And as a result, they end up becoming really good potential managers or potential business leaders further down the road. Because when you start doing these proof of concepts and you have this, as in your terms, the 6s and 7s doing the work, they start to understand more about the bigger picture about the business, about how does the business make money, how does the business address problems, how do I actually manage these projects? So the unintended consequence, if you will, if you find the right group of people inside your business, they will learn more about your business and they'll learn more about how to run your business. And then effectively what you're doing is you're grooming up the next round of leaders or the next managers for your projects. There's a win-win scenario in this, in that they actually come along and say, I've set the system up and it's actually helping us reduce losses here. It's helping us improve productivity here. And now I have a better understanding about how we install that or how this works. So the people running the programs very often learn more about your business, not just on the kind of the immediate problem. Effectively, it's nearly a management training ground as much as it is a technology development program.
Ronan, that's a tremendous insight there. I really appreciate that. I've never thought about that before. And I think that is true. I can see the truth in that. in terms of someone learning more about the business and even seeing new opportunities other than just the technology that they're testing out to grow the business. So I really appreciate that. That's tremendous. You've been very generous with your time here, Ronan. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how folks can get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently sitting in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. And the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. So I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And I think that's how you and I came across each other, Eric. I'm a big believer in sharing information, sharing knowledge. So it's my honor to be here and talk to you this evening. It's always great fun to get a chance to share what I know with other people. So yeah, the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. Simply do a search for Ronan Collins, and if it doesn't pop up immediately, put in BIM, and you'll definitely find me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way of doing it. That's
great. And are there any other websites that you have that you'd like to just mention?
We've got my current employer is the Red Sea Development Company, so you can look up the Red Sea and you'll see some of the projects we're working on. And I've got
That's awesome.
I have an old website that I dabble in from when I was in Hong Kong, but it's completely out of date. So LinkedIn is where it's at. So if you want to find out what I'm up to, get to LinkedIn, you'll see what I'm up to.
That's beautiful. You've been very generous. So you are in Riyadh there. So I got to ask the question. Let's say I'm doing my flight across the globe. I'm coming from, let's say, the United Kingdom. I'm going to Australia. There's a stop in Riyadh. Where am I going to go eat?
Ideally, you come to my house because my wife's a brilliant cook. But
there you go.
Normally, we go out. There's an Italian place not too far from where I'm living called Piatto's, and they've got my son's favorite pizza and my favorite pasta. So we normally go to Piatto's and have dinner there. The one thing you won't be able to get here is a glass of wine or a beer here because it's a dry country. So
yes,
you can enjoy the food and a Lucasade or a lemonade, but there's no beers.
Is it actually legal to eat Italian food without alcohol? I thought those two things just go together, right?
Yeah, there's probably a rule against it, but I'm going to be in Italy for a holiday in summer, so I'll make up for it when I get to Italy this summer.
Yeah, there you go. How do you spell the name of the restaurant in Riyadh, just so I have it?
Piatto, Piatto.
Piatto. Awesome. Ronan, you've been very generous with your time. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights. And thanks for joining us today on Construction Genius.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot, Rick.
Thank you for listening to Construction Genius today. I promise the outro of the episode will be much shorter than my intro. Didn't you enjoy that conversation with Ronan? I certainly did. He had some fresh insights that were tremendously helpful to me in thinking through how technology adoptions can be successful in an organization. So I hope you set your expectations correctly when bringing in a new technology. I hope you pick people who are able to communicate the benefits of technology as they understand them and as they are tested and proved in your company. And I hope that you see technology adoption as a wonderful opportunity to develop people in your organization into leadership roles. If you have any questions about the episode, feel free to reach out to me. You can go to Eric Anderton, that's the old website. The new website, or it's been around for a while now, constructiongenius.com/contact. Reach out to me. Give me some feedback on the episode. Please share this episode with other people. Hit Ronan up on LinkedIn. Let him know that you listened and that you appreciated his insights. And as always, feel free to give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius, and have a terrific day.